Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to go ahead and get started with our session today regarding the executive director role with Technologists for the Public Good. So hi, my name is Jen Noina, and I am currently president of Technologists for the Public Good. My background is in human-centered design and research, and I am currently located in Brooklyn. Stephanie, did you want to introduce yourself here?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie, and I use she, her pronouns, and my background is also in human-centered design. And I'm the vice president of the board.
Awesome. Thanks. So to dive in for the next hour, I'm going to spend some time giving you an overview of our organization, starting with our history and how we came to be. Then Stephanie is going to go over details about the role and responsibilities and the overall application process. And then we'll have a bunch of time at the end for Q&A. Since we are on webinar mode, feel free to drop your questions into the Q&A module at any time. Or you can also message us on the chat if you want to just message the host and panelists, and we'll get to all of your questions at the end. We'll also be recording this call, so if you aren't able to stay at the end or anything like that, we'll share out the recording after. So let's get started. Technologists for the Public Good, or TPG for short, launched in June 2021 after a year-long discovery process. So we partnered with the former Agile government leaders. They are an organization focused on the application of Agile practices in government that existed from 2014 to 2021, and they helped serve as the platform for TPG. We also partnered with the Beck Center for Social Impact and Innovation at Georgetown University, who led our initial discovery effort. So during our discovery process, we researched who is in the field, and we sought to understand what are their interests and their needs, which brought us to understand how do we best support them. So in our research, we also found that the field is often called many things like civic tech or gov tech. And to us, public interest technology captures this best. The field uses design, data, and technology to better deliver outcomes to the public, ultimately serving the public good. So our goal was to build upon and amplify the work that so many others are already doing in this field. Part of our research illuminated that there are already so many amazing organizations that support digital and product delivery, pipeline building, and pathways. But for many of us in this space, we don't necessarily have a home-based community. And so all of that has led us to where we are today. Our mission at Technologists for the Public Good is to power the people who are reimagining how the government serves the public. We are the first of its kind professional association for this growing field, and we're aimed at establishing a central place to provide career support and professional development to anyone interested in and are currently doing this type of work. So our focus is the workforce and the people. So who are the people? To us, technologist is broad. We serve the people who are passionate about employing technology as a tool to create government that works for the public. So we support individuals who are working in and with all levels of government, including federal, state, local, tribal, territorial, and across different US geographies, and whether they are working independently or through organizational affiliations. You know, all of these individuals at all levels of their careers, from folks who are just getting started to managers and leaders in the field. And we're growing. We've got about 600 people registered as members, and we are made up of a myriad of disciplines, from design to policy to data science. TPG creates space for this community to work together to improve the field for ourselves and for the people who we're hoping would join us in the future. And if you're in this field, you've most likely encountered some of the issues that we've captured here. These are some of the initial areas that came up in our research and that we've heard from our members. So these are some of the systemic issues that we're facing as a field at large. But we are passionate about tackling these issues and envision the future of public interest tech to be a field that is sustainable, equitable, and people-centered. So how do we achieve this vision? We are focused on fostering community, creating the space for people to connect with others who are as passionate as they are about shaping governments that can really work for the public. We're looking to develop the workforce, building and creating career paths, structures, and resources so that no matter where someone is on their career journey, they have the support to grow, learn, and do impactful work. We want this field to be a career choice that is both welcoming and inclusive for people who are new to their careers and experienced leaders alike. And lastly, we want to raise up the voices of our diverse community because representation matters. We have to have a workforce that looks like and can represent the people that we serve, because for technology to be for the people, it has to be by the people. We hope that by building a culture and field that centers the voices of those most excluded and oppressed by our current systems, we can ensure that our technology and social technical systems better serve the public at large. So right now, TPG is governed by our volunteer board of directors shown here. We have been hard at work focusing on funding, partnerships, value creation, and a high-level strategic vision of the organization. And we are so excited to bring in an executive director that can guide and shape this organization going forward. So now I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie to go over the role itself and the hiring process in detail.
Thanks, Jen. And I already see some really good questions coming in here through the Q&A. So I'm going to get through some of these logistics and hopefully answer some of them here. And if not, we'll get to them in the Q&A section at the end. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. We'll start with what you can expect from this position. So as listed on the job description, the salary range is going to be between $150 and $175 with a comprehensive health and benefits package. We are a fully remote board ourselves, and we support that remote work from anywhere in the US. But we do expect that some travel will be needed occasionally because we might transition to some in-person events, depending on what's happening in the world. This role will report directly to the board of directors. If you want to go to the next slide. So Jen alluded to this, and I just want to call out again that Technologists for the Public Good is at a pivotal moment. We're really looking for someone who can help forge a path in this organization so that we can achieve our goals as a community. We operate at the intersection of public and private, pushing the boundaries of what we can and should expect from the delivery of government services. So we are looking for an executive director who has spent time leading organizations across those sectors and has developed a perspective over time for what is working and what opportunities exist for change. As you might know, today our board and our community are largely based off of volunteer hours. And because we have an incredibly committed board and community, we have accomplished a lot. However, we know how prevalent burnout and exhaustion are in this field, and we believe in the importance of creating sustainability. Our vision for this community will require a leader who has experience driving sustainable business models and can support our goals. But lastly, of course, we're looking for a leader who can inspire others by the way that they communicate. Next slide. And now for what we hope this person to accomplish while in this role, we really want this person to focus first on building a team of people that will support this community. And like I mentioned in the last slide, we're very grateful for the volunteer hours that have built this organization to what it is today. But as we grow, we want to do so with intentionality and sustainability in mind, which means ensuring that the organization has the dedicated support it needs to achieve its goals. We need our executive director to drive a vision and a strategy that is compelling and aspirational, one that inspires our partners to support our vision for the future through helping us raise funds. Of course, this person should not just be able to talk about the work and the goals, but they should be able to implement that vision over time with the help of our community and the board of directors. Next slide. So I'm hopeful that many of you are here because you've already applied for the role, but if not, you still have plenty of time. We're going to talk through a little bit about what you can expect from the application and interview process. Yeah. So applications will close on Sunday, August 14th, and that's about 2 weeks from now, or a week and a half from now. Our interview process has 2 rounds with a homework exercise in between. All interviews will be held virtually over Zoom. And the first one will include a mix of behavioral and competency-based questions so that we can understand your history, your experience, and your approach to management. The second will include questions about how you like to work, and we'll focus on your response to the homework. I was going to pop a link to the application in the chat, but I don't know if I can. Oh, I can't. I think I can't do that. So I will go ahead and do that in case you need it. And if you lose the link, remember too that this link is posted at the top of our website, which is publicgood.tech. There's the link to the, oh, did I give that to everyone? Yeah, that's the link to the job posting. So with that, I'd love to turn it over to question and answers, and just want to elevate that we have a couple here in the chat. Jen, I'm sure you've seen them yourself. If you want to start with those.
Yeah, maybe we can like tag team on these questions. So the first question we have here is, when is the estimated start date? And so we're hoping to wrap up interviews. We'll close the applications by mid-August and give ourselves a couple of weeks to do interviews, depending on like scheduling and availability. And so we're hoping that sometime in late September or early October would be the estimated start date. The second question we have here is, will you be reaching out to people if they make it to the next round? Absolutely. So you'll know either way whether or not you'll be moving forward, or if we decided to go with other candidates. The third question you've got is, do you support people coming from a psych field wanting to branch into technology? I don't know, Sophie, do you want to take this one or?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. And like I mentioned in one of my slides, we are really looking for someone who has experience across public-private sector. And so though we love the idea of transitions, for this position in particular, that may not be the best fit. However, there might be some in the future, and we would love for you to join us as a member as you're making that transition. Do you want me to keep going, Jen?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. The next question asks, how many people will be interviewing us in each round? That's a really great question. Jen, I think we're thinking around 2 to 3 people is that right, for each round interview?
Yeah, it'll vary, but we're aiming to have 2 folks per round. This next question we've got, does the organization access both private and governmental grants for funding and growth? And so to be fully transparent here, our grant that we received to do this hiring is through philanthropic funding. And one of the things that we do have on our roadmap as a board is to really determine what our sustainability looks like long term. And so, looking towards other professional associations, there are a lot of sponsorships and membership dues and things like that. Those are things that we haven't explored yet, but we do expect that we'll explore that with the executive director as they come in. This next question is, what's your vision for scaling in terms of building a team? Once you've hired the executive director, how quickly would this move? So I think both Stephanie and I, and kind of the ethos of our board of directors is that, and I would say the ethos of this, public interest tech movement is that we never send anyone in alone. And so it's going to be the #1 priority for the executive director to come in to make sure that with our support that we're hiring the right team for them to be able to implement some of the things that they'd like to work on. And so we're hoping, once someone comes on in October, we'll start again hiring for a couple of roles that we were thinking about. So like an operations manager and a community manager role, as TBD. So sometime later in the fall. Let's see, this person's question. Okay, I'm just gonna skip to the next question. How would you view the board? Oh, how would you view the board's preference for technical versus strategic experience? I think I would really echo, Stephanie, what you said earlier, that I think it is important because you will be representing this community. You know, our current membership right now has a variety of technical expertise, right? So we have, you know, engineers that are really technical. You know, Stephanie and I, both of our backgrounds is in design, and we definitely sit within like the product development process. And so we're very familiar with, you know, the end-to-end building tooling. And then we've got a lot of folks that are also on like the policy side and more of like the strategic side. And so it is important for us to bring an executive director in that has that technical fluency. Stephanie, I don't know if there's anything you want to add there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Jen, a person who's actually done the work and understands what it takes to build technology feels very important. And also somebody who has experience in a leadership position guiding the strategy. So I know that's not a great answer. I think more in general, though, the combination of both seems very important for this role. Shall we move on? I'm happy to like take a couple of these, Jen.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. The next question is, what are your current goals for membership growth over the next 6 months, 12 months, and 5 years? That is a really good question. And I want to call out something that's important to us is that we're setting some important values for us to be tracking over the next few years, but we're really creating room for the executive director and the team to follow to guide how they implement our strategy here. So as far as membership growth goes for the next 6 months, 12 months, and 5 years, we don't have specific numbers that we're hoping to hit. What we're really focus on is how can we be providing value for our members in the next few years and allow that to scale up. But Jen, I want to make sure that I didn't answer something that you would have said differently.
No, that totally, I think we're aligned on that front. So this next question we've got here is, what are some of the pain points that led to determining that this role was needed? I think one of the biggest things is that we recognize that right now we're an all volunteer community that's doing this work. And while, you know, in our research and discovery process and, you know, our continual engagements with our membership, recognizing that there's a lot of things that we think this organization can do. So it basically opened the door for bringing in someone who can do the strategic visioning, but then also some of the implementation day to day. And I think just to kind of build on to that, it's also important for us to have value or like create value for our members and, you know, create resources and, you know, trainings and things like that that would be really useful for the field at large. Did you want to take some of these next ones?
Yeah. The next one is, it appears these are great questions, by the way. There's a lot coming in, so hopefully we're getting to them all. But it appears that there are currently no fees for membership. How are you generating revenue now? This is a good question. I want to call out that our organization has transitioned over the last few years from Agile Government Leaders, or AGL, to Technologists for the Public Good. And during our days as AGL, there were membership fees. We've since pulled back and decided for the time being that we're not going to charge membership fees while we reassess how the value that we're delivering to members. But that is something that could be on the table in the next, as we're progressing on our goals here. However, that being said, I imagine we will still continue to go after grant funds as to remain sustainable as an organization. All right, and the next one is, what are the expectations for the new EDU in year one? I think I covered this a bit in one of my slides, so let me just pull that one up once again, which is our goal is to for that ED to focus on hiring a team to start that can support this organization, setting a vision and strategy, and thanks, Jen, for pulling that up. Setting a vision and strategy for the year and for the years to come, and using that vision and strategy to drive some fundraising activity. And of course, we would love to see that the ED is working on delivering actual value in the first year to our members and starting to take or to work on the strategic plan. Of course, like our board of directors and our community has put a lot of effort and energy towards the goals that we're trying to achieve, which Jen went over earlier in the deck. So it's not as if the ED is starting from scratch. There's going to be a lot of collaboration in terms of those goals. And I'm going to keep going, and then I'll pass it back to you here in a moment, Jen. The next one is, can you provide a specific example of how this organization might benefit a government employee? Just trying to get a better sense of organizational goals. Yeah, the thing that we have really landed on as an organization is that we want to be a professional association. And what that means, I think actually, Jen, you have a pretty good slide about this or maybe even in the slide 18, where there are some clear examples that we see under those three verticals that Jen called out: fostering community, developing the workforce, and amplifying the voices in our field. So for example, one thing that we've done since the beginning of the year is we've created groups that are focused on specific topics. For example, we have a committee group focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We have another focus on education for our community. So helping our bridge the connection between our members is one of our key elements, or a key example of an area we are hoping to provide value for a government employee. But another thing that we would love to see moving forward is helping to keep folks in the field by helping them on-ramp or improve their skills, and or transition to new skills if that feels right to them. Maybe even supplying mentoring and coaching if that's possible, to enable folks to maintain that connection to their community. And lastly, of course, we're interested in maybe doing some advocacy and helping to improve the field more broadly across the US here. So all of these things I think can help. What we're really hoping for is to keep people in the civic tech field engaged and improving their skills over time. And maybe I'll put it back to you, Jen, for the next few here.
Yeah, I was actually gonna just jump down to this next question that we've got, which is, does the board have policies, bylaws in place? And I did want to say that we did. I will go ahead and share the link to our bylaws. They're published on our website. And if that person had any specific questions in our bylaws, feel free to ask another question. We've got 14 more questions here, which is awesome. And we've got plenty of time for it. So we're just gonna keep rolling. Feel free to ask any questions if something might be missing. This next question is, do you have a strategic plan? We do. That strategic plan right now looks like it's kind of like a 1 to 3 year plan, and it's less filled in for our, pulling out to 3 years, but this is also something that we are really excited to have an executive director who has a point of view come in and help us build out, right? There's only so much that we can do as a governance board, and we also want to make sure that we're building something that makes sense and is implementable. Does the organization have, from time to time, opportunities to meet in person? We think so. We have only been in operation for the last year. And like Stephanie mentioned, we transitioned from Agile Government Leaders into TPG. And so Agile Government Leaders held conferences and things like that. And so that is something that we are really interested in doing as an organization. I do think that moving forward this year, especially with the pandemic, having it be a little bit safer for us to meet in person, we definitely want to have those opportunities. So there should be those opportunities going forward. This next question we've got is funding in place to facilitate the position and other positions? Right now we do have funding. So I shared a little bit that we currently have philanthropic funding that is in place to support the executive director, as well as some additional hiring for that executive director to build a team. And so, you know, while we envision that there'll be an aspect of fundraising that's a little bit ongoing as part of this role, that there is currently funding in place. We will be sharing a little bit more detail about that in the next couple of weeks as to like what that looks like, and more details just in terms of like getting it approved for communications and stuff like that. This next question is, how long is the philanthropic funding designed to last before sustainable funding will be required? Unfortunately, like I alluded to, we do have a bit of a comms approval to communicate this. And so once we get that approval, we will be sharing that in the coming weeks. Are there existing committees or initiatives in progress that the board or other volunteers are working on? Absolutely. Like Stephanie mentioned, we have 5 committees right now. Stephanie, do you mind finding the link to our committees on our website and sharing that in the chat? So the 5 committees are education, DEIB, communications, membership, and events. And each of these committees have their own co-chairs. And so, or they each have 2 co-chairs. And so each of these committees also have a handful of initiatives that they're individually working on. Well, I guess like we're all collaborating on together. And so we have held a handful of events in the past around panels and presentations and workshops and things like that. And so we do expect that we will continue on to provide some of that programming to our membership going forward. Could you tell me about one of the main challenges an ED would face in this position? That is a good question.
I have an idea for that one.
Stephanie, yeah.
Yeah, I think what's exciting about the civic tech community is there are a lot of different organizations that exist. And I think one interesting, I would actually frame it more as an opportunity and not a challenge, but as how can we, technologists for the public good, meaningfully connect to those other organizations and support individuals in understanding where we fit in that larger ecosystem, I think is it could be a good opportunity for this person.
Thanks. This next question we've got is nonprofit experience, particularly in terms of fiduciary and governance experience, something that you'll be looking for in applicants? I think that we're looking primarily for leadership and management experience, and then experience in the public sector and the private sector. So it would be great for someone to have that nonprofit experience. But I think that like we're trying to balance, you know, there are lots of different, you know, things that a great candidate can have. And so we're open to, you know, if you're interested in this role, definitely I'd encourage you to apply. What do you see as your serviceable available market for membership and your service attainable market for membership? That is a great question. I think that in terms of the available market, right now we're keeping our membership pretty broad. So, you know, anyone who is working in and around government, and something that we're also like looking at is nonprofits that are in this space and folks that have that similar experience. Right now we are at 600 members. And I know that like there are a lot of organizations in this field, volunteers that are a part of Code for America, for example. There are lots of government employees, and so those are some of the folks that I think that would be kind of like the market for our membership. Stephanie, did you want to add anything?
I would just add that, sorry, I keep pointing back, but Jen has a really great slide about like who we mean when we're talking about who we are serving. I think it's slide 11, Jen. But one thing that is really important to us is that technology doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? There are all kinds of people that have to be engaged in technology in order to make it successful. So as we all know, there are many employees that exist at the federal, local, state level. And then also individuals who work for vendors that support government or choose to volunteer their time to support government. So there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for us to grow our membership base within all of those different verticals. And Jen, I'll let you answer this. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was also just gonna say in the last question about like the available market for membership. Even folks that are in the private industry that are partnering with government in some way. We have someone who's in our board now who used to be in government and is in private industry. And I think there are lots of folks that are interested in making an impact and or even like making the jump into government. So I would include those folks in the available market as well. So this next question, can you share at this point what types of needs were identified in your discovery process? Yeah, I think we had really like three main insights that came out of this. One was the need for community. A lot of people, even though this field is strong on collaboration, just the way we're organized, sometimes it just makes it really difficult for us to like reach across the aisle to a certain extent. And so sometimes we find ourselves in silos more than we want to, right? So, I'm working at the federal level, Stephanie's working at the state level. There might not necessarily be those lines of communication. And so one of the biggest things that we heard in our discovery process was that, opportunities for people to network in this community, to make connections, and to like building upon that, share resources and best practices, right? Even before the webinar that we had just right now, Stephanie and I were sharing some of the things that we were encountering in our work and really just like both commiserating, but also just giving each other advice on like how we could tackle some of these things that we're both facing, but at very different scales of government. So that was one thing that really came out from our discovery process. Another thing was just training and like upskilling, right? So in this field, I'm sure as some of you have encountered, we kind of encounter a lot of bureaucracy and different ways of doing things. And so, the ability to train and to upskill might not necessarily be there as if you were working in the private tech industry or something comparable to that. And so, giving folks that opportunity to do that, to speak at conferences, to attend conferences, to share best practices and share resources was one of the other needs. And then I think the third thing that came out of our discovery was really around, sorry, I'm thinking of how to like characterize this. One of the needs was just around, because this field is still so new, the onus is really put on the workforce to navigate it themselves, right? So we heard a lot of, like, I like this, I'm doing this now, but I don't know where to go next, right? And so Stephanie kind of alluded to that in terms of like retaining the people in this field. We see a lot of folks exit and then go back into private industry, and that's great. Sometimes they'll come back, but they're, because the field is new, the onus ends up being put on the individual. And so one of the things that came out of that is, are there structural things that we should be doing as a field in identifying the need for a professional association to step in and provide some of the career paths and things like that, professional development, to really close that gap. Sorry, that was a very long answer, but I thought it'd be interesting to kind of go into the research that we uncovered and why we decided to create this organization in the first place. Stephanie, do you want to take the next few?
Yeah, definitely. I'm happy to give you a break. Next question is, are there currently any partners that have joined the membership providing revenue or services that members can use to improve their role or business? I'd say not at this point, Jen, but I will check you to get a gut check from you. I think that we have had lots of conversations as a board about what it might mean to partner with other organizations that might be able to provide benefits to our members, but haven't yet taken that on. So that could be a really great opportunity for the executive director here.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. All right, moving on to the next one is, understanding you are currently volunteer-led, can you talk a bit about the culture within the organization and the type of culture you would like to see an ED cultivate? I love this question. Our team, our board of directors, has put a lot of intention and thought towards the culture that we have in our board, and also the culture that we would like to see on our membership, and of course, for that culture in the team that we end up hiring. For example, we have a code of conduct that we published early on this year that we use to really guide the way that we interact with one another. So that being said, our culture within the board, we very much are believe in the importance of equity and inclusion in all the things that we do, in diversity, and really holding one another accountable to the actions that we're taking. So as far as the culture that we'd like to see in this with this ED and the team that they hire, we would love to see them practice the values and the principles that we have defined as a board, and also really stay true to our roots as agile government leaders, which is to say constantly learning and improving. And that is why I think a lot of times when you've asked us about further in advance, we'll say, like, again, we don't want to dictate how the executive director implements the strategy, but we want to set some boundaries and some guidelines and be there to collaborate along the way. All right, next question. Do you have examples of how you are currently operationalizing your goals, and what are some lessons learned thus far? Yeah, I think the thing that Jen mentioned about the committees is the best way that we've done, especially this year and most recently, to operationalize our goals, which is to say that we want to be an organization that is really driven by our community, and not necessarily dictated to by the board of directors. So what's exciting about that is we've actually had folks step up and from our community to raise their hands and lead those organizations, and then also take onus and action to create events and start to create material that actually will benefit members. So as far as lessons learned, like Jen mentioned, all of that activity is volunteer led, and all of us lead very, very busy lives. So in some cases, I think like the big lesson learned is what we're applying here to this ED position, which is to say, we know that not all of our goals can be achieved just through volunteer power. That we need to create more sustainable ways for folks to engage, more sustainable and honestly more equitable ways for folks to engage and drive this community forward. And for many, that means that not everybody can give their time for free to something. We really want to are focusing on that, especially with this position. Jen, do you want to take the next one? Because I always get this one wrong.
So the next question is, has this been established as a 501c3 or a C6? We are established as a 501c6. I hope that clarifies. I think 501c6 is around like trade associations and things like that. Are there plans to partner with education, so colleges, universities, or training sites, allowing members to further career skills? We do not have plans at this point, but that is something that we're definitely open to exploring. I know that a lot of our membership today teach in a lot of different capacities. There's a lot of like trainings and workshops that we give to our government partners and things like that. And so I think when looking at education overall, it's a matter of, again, to what Stephanie was alluding to, right? Like really understanding what is it that our membership needs. And so our education committee has done a really great job of, and if none of you are in our Slack right now, I would encourage you to join our Slack. Stephanie, I don't know if you mind trying to find that link. Because in our Slack, that's really our main way of communicating with our members. And for example, our education committee has, like they consistently reach out to like our members and ask like, hey, what are some ideas that you have and things like that. And so, I think we're planning potentially on doing a book club maybe in the next coming month. And that was just something based off of just a handful of folks said, hey, we've been wanting to read this book, and can we get together and discuss it? And so hopefully that answers your question. Do you see conferences and events being a large funding source? Potentially. We, to be honest, we have not talked about funding sustainability and things like that. And that this is something that we've talked about lightly. And so I think it could definitely be an avenue for us. Do you need any more board members? So right now, I think we are capped at 9, and that amount has worked for us really well. And it is stated in our bylaw as such, so I don't expect that we will need any at this point. Although this is an individual membership organization, has there been any discussion about securing corporate or other types of sponsorships? We have had some conversations about that, but I think that, like I said, we're still growing, and we're still building this organization. And so while we've had discussions, we haven't gone down that path yet. And it's something that we're hoping for when the executive director comes in to, for us to do this long-term visioning and talk about what that could potentially look like.
Want me to take the next one? Oh,
yeah, that's totally fine.
Do you see this organization engaging in public policy or advocating for policy changes? Yes, absolutely. That's one of the options. One of the verticals that Jen had presented on one of our slides is something that we would like to see this group do. Next one, I think we answered part of it. So about whether or not or how TPG is structured. It is not fiscally sponsored at this moment. Like we said, we have philanthropic funds at the moment and are looking to expand our financial model and grant funding. And do we currently use the service to manage finances, HR, et cetera? And no, we don't currently, because we don't have staff. However, we are looking to use the service to do that as we bring on this ED. The next one is, what were a member's annual dues for the Agile Government Leaders Organization, and how much annual revenue did they generate via conferencing? That is a good question, and unfortunately, we don't have the answers to that right here at our disposal. So I'm sorry about that. Next one, are there any other professional organizations that you look to for inspiration? Absolutely. In fact, just before this webinar, Jen sent me one from CX. I don't know if Jen, you would mind sharing the link or talking a little bit about that one and what inspires you? Yeah,
so I would say that we definitely have looked to other professional organizations and associations. So when we were thinking about really what this field needs long term, right? Like, how do we professionalize this field? How do we help mature this field? One of the things that we looked at were the American Medical Association, the American Bar Association, right? Like, I don't know that we'll necessarily go to that extent of, needing to be certified to do this type of work, but those professional associations really established the field as something that was really credible, right? I sometimes feel that in this field, there's a lot of influencing and consulting that we're all continually doing. And so, we were thinking that like one way to establish credibility is for us to unite as a professional association. And then to Stephanie's point, let me see if I can find that link. This organization just caught my eye, and it's the Customer Experience Professional Association. And there are lots of, professional associations that we've looked at that are similar. This was part of our research that we did during our discovery process. Hopefully some of those examples give you an example of what we were looking at. Have you done any financial modeling that mirrors your strategic planning? We have. So we have done financial modeling up to 3 years. And yeah, hopefully that kind of answers that. 50C6 orgs typically rely heavily on membership dues, program registration, and sponsorships. Have you done any type of feasibility study to confirm that these are realistic revenue streams? And if so, any insights you can share? We haven't gone to the step of conducting feasibility studies. We have had some informal conversations with, similar type of organizations. And so at this point, we don't have any insights, but we do think that, those streams that are listed, the membership dues, program registration, sponsorships would be viable for us. Are you able to say which foundation provided TPG with funding? We won't be able to until we get that approval. And so I think you mentioned just in a couple of weeks that we will publicly share that news. We've just got 2 more questions here. Stephanie, did you want to take these last 2 maybe?
Yeah. This next one is, did you see the organization engaging in credentialing or credential validation as part of a service offering? That is something we talked about early on, and could be a really interesting avenue for both financial and value add for our members. So absolutely. Next one is, what are the principal revenue generators that feed your financial model? That is a good question. I think right now the key things that we're looking at in the near future are the membership model, like we called out, philanthropic funding, and potentially other avenues, depending on how we or the strategy that this ED helps us to find. But Jen, anything you'd add to that?
No, I think you've covered it.
Awesome.
All right, and we've got this one last question. If anyone has any other questions, we've still got 10 minutes, but you spoke about the education field, professional development, as well as finding other career paths for members. Many maker spaces offer similar services on a local level. Have you, or do you plan on partnering with any maker space or other local orgs? We have not partnered with any of these organizations yet, but we do, we are open to partnerships. And so I think one of the things that was in the position description for the role was, having the executive director have experience in cultivating these partnerships. There are a lot of organizations in our space. And so, for some of our past panels and events like that, we have partnered with folks to facilitate those panels, right? So Coding It Forward is one that we partnered with. The Presidential Innovation Fellows is another, and the US Digital Court was another that we partnered with. How many members on the board have been part of a startup organization? I'm not sure that I have that knowledge. I think a lot of the folks on the board have had experience with, starting up an organization. And really when we put together our board is all volunteer, as well as we're voted on by membership. And so that process is a nominating committee opens up the application for board members. Anyone who is currently a member can apply. And then we take a look at, who might be best, what are some of the skills that are missing, who would be best to represent the community. And then we open up a slate of candidates that the membership then votes on. Have you explored any type of collaboration with the Technology Councils of North America? We have not, and I think what we'll do is maybe write that down and take a look at this organization. I'm not sure that I've ever heard of them, but that seems really like a great potential collaboration or partnership. Awesome. So we've got 7 minutes left. We'll maybe hold for another 2 minutes to see if anyone has any last lingering questions, but thank you so much for being here and asking all these questions and being interested in this role in our organization.
Yeah, and maybe just a quick note on next steps, Jen, or did you want to talk a little bit about how we'll recap this for folks that weren't able to join?
Oh yeah, so for folks who weren't able to join, or if you missed any part of this session, we will be sharing the link to this session on our YouTube. And then we'll also have the questions listed with responses as an email. Awesome. Well, it doesn't look like there are any other questions. Again, I want to thank you so much for your interest. Oh, we've got one last one that just slid in under that mark. Can you say more of the levels of management and leadership that you'd like to see a candidate, perhaps some possible thing you hope they've accomplished? So Stephanie, you can definitely chime in, but we're looking for someone who has had experience leading an organization. So someone who has, built and or founded an organization and or even taken an organization and grown it. I don't know if I'm missing anything.
No, I think that's right, Jen.
Okay.
I would say too, of course, that we are really excited to have people apply, even if they don't necessarily see themselves fit perfectly in the description. That's especially because we really recognize that that our field is sometimes comes from non-traditional backgrounds. So would love for folks to throw their ring in the hat regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope everyone has a great rest of your week. Thanks.